Hi everyone! Happy Video Friday. I'm going to be showing you how to make these really cute sugar candy skull earrings and candy flower earrings, which could become charms, could be earrings. You can wear a different one on each ear or make a pair. Totally up to you how you want to combine them. But the techniques that you need in order to make all three of these are a really simple single column peyote start, which I'll demo. And then you need to know only really three really basic brick stitch techniques. A regular decreasing brick stitch row, a regular increasing brick stitch row, and then there's a few spots, just two in particular, where you have an indented decrease, which is a decrease that is more than one bead in from the former row. So I'm going to show you examples of how to perform each of those, so you'll be all set with all the tools you need to make any of these patterns. All right, so there is a PDF, of course, with the patterns attached, and I did include some illustrations of all of the types of decrease, increase, making that first row. So you'll find that in the description, in the video description here. But let me show you where we're going to start and explain a little bit about the process. So no matter which pattern you select, I have identified for you the row that is best suited to do the single column peyote. I chose these rows based on a few things. So for example, on the little skull, I just picked the widest row, and either the row above or below it in this case would have been fine. And what I like to do is I like to create these with both the tail and the working thread. So like I'll string the first 3 beads and start a single column peyote stitch by going back through, and you just keep building it out, right? Until you have that first set all finished. So that's the way that you can most quickly build them. And then I like to leave a long tail to complete part of it, the part of it that I'm, leaving behind for the tail to work. And then I'll use that working thread at the end of this row to complete this part. So that's how to do the mini skull. The more complicated pattern here is the sugar candy skull with the flower crown. And so to do that one, I identified that it is actually easier to start with the crown part because it saves you from having to do a major increase, which is a little bit more advanced technique for brick stitch. And so this, you only have to do an increased decrease if you create it this way. So this is what I'm going to show you right now, because I think that is by far the easiest way to get going with this particular one. All of those skills put together, this one's actually pretty easy. The flower, you start with these rows here for single column peyote, work that, and then leave a long tail that you can work from here with, and you just finish, the rest with your working thread. So pretty much the same thing. You've got regular decrease rows, an indented decrease row, and an increase row. So hopefully I said that right. But yeah, super easy. Let me show you each step, and I'm going to timestamp these. So if you're just looking for, hey, show me how to do an increase, show me how to do an indented decrease, I'm going to timestamp each one in the description for you, so you can skip ahead of all this. All right, let's jump in and start with creating the first part of this one. So you're going to want to start with for each of these, you don't need a lot of thread, especially for the mini skull. About a wingspan for the flower. So 55 inches maybe. You don't need much. Leave half of it as your tail when you start. For the crown, it's about the same. We're going to do about 55 inches. It doesn't really need that much, but I just like to have a little extra. And so for thread, really forgiving. You can go anywhere from like 4-pound Fireline to some Nozue. I was using Nozue on my flower. You can use KO, 1G, all those threads are great. So just whatever you've got. And for beading needle, size 11, size 10, size 12, you can get away with all of them. They're all going to work great. Start by taking a look at the pattern. We're going to string 2 turquoise and 1 yellow bead. So if you look at it this way, it's 1, 2, and then 3. And then we'll bring bead 3 back through bead 1, and we'll pull to tighten, leaving a long tail here that we can use to work this part of the design. Then we'll take and pick up a turquoise bead. We'll go back through the yellow, pick up a turquoise, go back to the turquoise, and so on until we've completed the row. We'll lock the edges in, work this part, and then use the tail to work that part. So that's the plan. So here's my about 55 inches of thread, and I got my needle threaded. And so I'm going to start, just like we said, with picking up 2 turquoise and 1 yellow bead. And feel free, you guys, to change the color of these patterns if you'd like. You can actually, work with any colors that you think would be neat in your design. So I'm going to leave a pretty long tail. Of the 55 inches that I cut, I think I'm going to leave behind at least half of that to complete the bottom part of my design, which would be the skull part. But so here's those first 3 beads. And we're going to go through the first bead, kind of heading back through it. There we go. And when you pull the working and tail threads apart, you'll get that little peyote stitch pop. And orienting it the way that it is in our design currently, you want to hold it like that. So if you're following the pattern, it's positioned that way. And let me show you the pattern just really quick. So the pattern here, we've got these 3 beads. I'm going to pick up a turquoise bead and go back through the yellow. Here's our turquoise bead. Here's our peyote start. And we're going to go back through the yellow bead. All right. And so just following along with the pattern, the next bead we need to pick up is a turquoise bead. We go back through the turquoise bead that is right before it. So far, so good. We've got the bottom of the little flower there. Next bead I need is a white bead. And now I need purple. And again, I'm just getting that from those highlighted rows in our pattern PDF. Another purple bead. Yellow bead. And so it's just growing from here, just like that, see? Need our next purple. And I forgot to mention the what I'm doing here is I'm actually holding everything in my hand to make it tight. So you see how after each bead, I pull through and I tighten it, and then I'll just take my fingers and just hold it like that. That keeps everything in place while you add the next bead. So here's our purple bead. We'll string that on. The next bead we need is a white bead. And now red, switches to red. I tried to make all the little colorful flowers just be right there, right at the very beginning, so you can have the fun of seeing it all next to each other. And pull that down, almost to the end. So there it is. And that is a single column peyote start for your brick stitch. So what we've done so far is we've created this row right here. Just this one right here. There is one extra little step I want to show before we dive into the brick stitch though. And that is, given the way we did our start here, it's nice and speedy and fast, but the thread bridges that we need to anchor into will be easier to anchor into if we weave these beads around one time just to lock in everything. Additionally, my thread needs to be heading in this direction on this side. So a lot of bead weaving I find is just getting where you need to be. So to get this thread, let's start with this one, since our needle's on it. We want to get that one to be exiting from over here, from this edge bead. So I'm going to head up through the adjacent bead. And then I'm going to go through this bead right here. And that's just so that I can get over to the other bead without having being in the wrong direction, right? If I go through the yellow bead, I'll have to be going down through that bead, and I want to be going up through it. So from here, oops, sorry about that. I didn't mean to drop it there. From here, I'm going to go through the yellow bead, and then I'll head up through this red bead here. Tighten everything up. So this side is ready to go. Really quickly, I'm just going to pop a needle onto the long tail that we left exiting out of that bead. And just getting this done now so that when I'm doing my next step, my next brick stitch step, I'll be brick stitching into the thread bridges here along the top. And so I'd like to make sure that this thread bridge here at the end is nice and strong for that. So what we'll do to make sure that happens is we'll take this tail thread and we'll just go through this bead and then up through that bead again. And so that's just a very quick, super fast way to lock in the edges of your peyote start for brick stitch designs. And I do recommend doing that so that you have a nice strong foundation to start your brick stitch. Okay, so let's do a normal decrease row according to our pattern here. And I'll just flash that really quick. Again, we're just going to be 2 red, a white, 2 purple, a white, 2 turquoise. So here's our 2 red. And we'll start with 2 beads. I'm going to go through the second thread bridge here. So there's the first thread bridge. Here's the second. We're going to go under it with our needle, boring that through. And then just come up through that bead there. So just like that. And you'll have a kind of wonky bead at the start. Easy to fix. Just go back through that bead. Bring your thread through. And then come up through that second bead again. So just like that. Oops, sorry about that. And when you bring the thread through, it'll tighten it down just like that. You can even help it by putting your thumbnail above those 2 beads and really pulling tightly. And then it'll really pop into place for you just like that. All right, let's finish the row really quick and then we can show the next type of brick stitch. Oops. It's very tiny, so hanging on to it is part of the challenge, I think. So with each of these beads, now just picking up the next bead in the pattern. So you always start your row, if you'd like to hide your thread, you start your row with 2 beads. And then for each subsequent bead, you work one by one. So pick up 1 bead and then just go under the next thread bridge. And I'm just following along with what I've got on my pattern. And remember we left that super, super long tail. I just need to make sure that it doesn't get in the way. I'll set that needle over here. In fact, I might take that tail and just tuck it behind my fingers a little bit over here so it is out of the way of the work that I need to do on this side. Turquoise bead. Here's another turquoise bead, and it is the last bead in the row. So that's a regular decrease row. And super easy to get done. So the next row in our pattern is an example of an indented decrease. And this is the strongest decrease we have in any of the patterns. So if you know how to do this one, you can do them all. So currently our thread's exiting over here from this turquoise bead. And we need to be putting a bead on above these. So we need our first bead to start above our second thread bridge without any beads hanging out over here. So the way to do that is you just need to weave through the work a little bit. So bring your needle down through the adjacent bead, pull through. And then what I like to do is make a turn through the work in the row below, because my goal is to be exiting from the bead that I'm currently headed down from. So I'm going to go through this one here, the yellow. And then I will make a turn and head up through its neighbor. In this case, it's this turquoise bead right here. And then we'll head up through the bead that is my goal to get to, which was the second bead in from the row. And how that looks in the illustration. So the larger decrease is, again, we just came out of the edge bead, went down through its neighbor, made a turn through the row below it. And now we're going to continue stitching. So in this case, for our pattern, looking back to that, the first thing I want to do is pick up 2 black beads. And those are going to be the first ones of my row here. So you always start your brick stitch row with 2 beads. It's the best way to hide your thread. So here's my 2 beads, and I'm going to go through in this case it's our third thread bridge, but you could also think of it as the second thread bridge from the one you're exiting, and that's important for other types of decreases. We'll call the bead we're exiting here, for this purpose, bead 1, so we're just going to go over the second thread bridge from there. Pull that through, come up through the second bead, and it is recommended to go back through the first one just to straighten that out. Even if you can make it look good, like I did there just by holding it, they still tend to move later. So I always do that little loop just to tighten them up. Here's the next bead of the row. And then I'm going to need to get the blue beads. Just a moment. So here's a blue color for the last flower on here. Here's the next one. And we're going to leave the last thread bridge unworked, and that completes the large decrease. And this brings us to an increase row, the next row in our pattern. And this is the largest increase we have in any of the patterns. So this is how you do it for all of the places in our pattern where you see it being 1 bead wider than the row below it. A couple places where you're going to see that happen here. And it happens in the flower design too in a few places. See? So here's how to do that. We're going to start by picking up the first 2 beads of the row we're creating, which for this one is going to be a blue and a yellow. So here's our blue bead and our yellow bead. And instead of going under the second thread bridge, which has been our convention thus far, we're going to go under the first one. So 2 beads, and we're going under the first thread bridge here. And then you'll come up through the second bead just like usual. And super easy. Pops right into place. So now you have an increased start. And then you just stitch the rest of the row with 1 bead per thread bridge, like we've been doing. Here's one. And here's the next bead. Next one. And we have 1 more bead to go, but we don't have another thread bridge. That is okay. And let's pick up another bead. This is the last bead in this row. And what we'll do is we'll just go under. You can't really see it, but you'll be able to kind of feel it. See how we can get our bead kind of just by placing it under the one we just put there. We want to grab that thread bridge again. Same one we used for the yellow bead. Pull that through. And it'll already kind of pop in place for you. Go ahead and just come right up through that bead. And if you want to, you can take your thumbnail while you tighten, and it'll pop right into place for you. So that's how to do an increase. This is almost finished now. We just have 1 row left for the top, and it's a regular decrease row. We'll start with these 2 beads. And since it's a decrease, we're going to go under the second thread bridge. Pull tight. Come down through. Up through this one. Using my thumbnail to tighten. There we go. And here is the last bead of the row. So there's the crown top done. What we have left to do is a couple of things. We can put on a wire guardian, weave in our thread, then move our needle to our tail thread, and from there, work the rest of the pattern down from this section here. So this will work the rest of the pattern, and this is going to serve to attach our wire guardian. So the wire guardian is a good place to put it is above these 3 beads in the center. So just go down through this bead here. Make a turn through here. Up through the adjacent. Up through this bead right here. And so that's a great way to get woven around. It's the same way we were doing the weaving around to do our decreases. My goal is just to be exiting from the top of the second bead. String the wire guardian. And when I string wire guardians, I'll string one side, then I'll go over the well and just kind of hold it in my hand to keep the thread in the well. And just do that as it comes down to meet the work. From here, we want to go through not the next bead, but the bead after that. There we go. And so that is how you attach the wire guardian on this side. Do some weaving around. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can go through the bead below, the adjacent bead in that row. So just like that. And that helps you make a nice turn. Pull tightly to hide that thread. And then you could head up through. I often can do it in one swoop. The bead above and the wire guardian. Come over the side of the wire guardian. And it'll happen that you'll be able to get through probably both of those beads. And hold everything in your hand so that that thread stays in the top. And from here you can go to reinforce it one more time and weave in your thread. Another thing you could do, I wanted to share, if you didn't want to do the turn I showed, you could go through this bead and then come up through this next one here. So just an alternative path you can use for the wire guardian. And then up through the wire guardian again. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. I think 3 passes is just great. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to weave in my thread by going through some beads and making a few turns. And I'm going to show that a couple times on this sample and on one of the other ones we're working. But the basic idea is just to go through some beads, make a turn, going up through a few more. There's a second turn. Make sure that my thread hides nicely. Oops, sorry about that. And that's all there is to it. You just want to go ahead and weave in by going through some of these nice beads here. And I'm going to go ahead and trim it once I get to the bottom of this next one. I think that's pretty good for weaving in. So from here, all you'll need to do is work another indented decrease. So the decrease you need to do from this side, we'll hold up the pattern a little bit here so I can show you exactly where you're at. So we're exiting right here, see? So that's the spot right here. So what you're going to want to do is just go down through this adjacent turquoise bead, make a turn through the yellow turquoise bead here, come up through this one, string the 2 white beads, go under the thread bridge that's above those 2, come back up here, straighten it out, complete a normal row. Then it's regular increase rows until you get to here. Decrease, increase, decrease. And that's really all there is to it. To add a wire guardian on your flower, you just need to take a look at the illustration on the very last page, because the flower has a little bit of a different configuration. Both mini scully and the regular skull, let me show you really quick, both of these end with 5 beads at the top. So a wire guardian attachment's the same for those. They straddle over 3 beads. On the flower, I found that the 4 beads looked better if you put it over 2. So that's super easy. You just do something like this. And you can even, if you'd like, you can come down through and strengthen it by doing something like that. Right? So there's lots of ways you can reinforce and make that strong. So there they are. Here's our little collection here. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and that you will love making these cute little candy skull earrings and flower earrings. They're great for any season. They're good for Halloween, Day of the Dead, and basically all year round because they're really cute and they're really cool. So all you got to do here is find an earwire, like any earwire will work, and go ahead and just you can put a jump ring if you want it to hang a little lower. You could add a cool like gemstone bead with a wrapped loop and put that on. There's so many places you can take this design from here. So I can't wait to see what you guys create, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. And until next time, happy beading!